Have you ever woken up, brewed your morning coffee, sat down in silence, and suddenly realized, I don't know who I am anymore? Not in a dramatic movie script kind of way, but in that quiet, unsettling way that creeps in after retirement. When the job title is gone, when the calendar isn't packed, when no one's asking you for meetings, decisions, or deadlines. It's just you and the question. So ... what now? Hi, I'm Marcus Smart, 67 years old, and after 4 decades of hard work, I found myself standing in my living room one morning, staring at the walls, realizing I didn't know how to introduce myself anymore. Not as a manager, not as someone with a team, not even as the guy who always brought donuts on Fridays. I was just ... me. And for a while, that didn't feel like enough. You see, so many of us spend our lives giving, producing, achieving. We wear our titles like armor: teacher, doctor, business owner, engineer, parent. We pour ourselves into careers, responsibilities, other people. And then one day, the to-do list disappears. The house quiets down, and we're left asking, if I'm not doing what I used to do, who am I now? That feeling isn't weakness. It isn't failure. It's the start of something deeply human. A reset. A chance to rediscover your identity, not as a role, but as a person. And that journey, my friend, can be one of the most beautiful chapters of your life, if you let it. This video is not about fixing you. You don't need fixing. It's about seeing yourself with fresh eyes, giving yourself permission to change, and learning how to build a life not just around purpose, but peace. So let's start where most of us begin after we leave our careers. The discomfort. That awkward sense of emptiness that bubbles up when the old routines stop. For some, it feels like boredom. For others, it's sadness or frustration. I remember walking into a grocery store one morning, just because I didn't know what else to do. The cashier asked how I was, and I smiled, but inside I was thinking, I have no idea anymore. That's the first truth about identity after work. We confuse what we do with who we are. It's natural. Our jobs have been part of us for so long, but identity isn't a label. It's not your business card. It's how you see yourself when no one's watching. It's your voice, your values, your stories, your presence. And sometimes, rediscovering those parts takes time. One of the hardest things I had to accept was that doing less didn't mean I was becoming less. There's a strange guilt that comes when you're not busy anymore, as if productivity equals worth. But let me say this clearly. You are not your schedule. You are not your output. You are enough right here, right now, simply because you exist. I met a man recently, 72 years old, who had spent his whole life as a military officer. Sharp, respected, highly disciplined. When he retired, he didn't know how to sit still. He told me, Marcus, if I'm not leading something, I feel invisible. So he started walking dogs in his neighborhood. Not for money, just because it gave him purpose. A new kind of leadership, if you will, one on 4 legs. The beauty of this stage in life is that you get to redefine everything. You get to ask, what do I actually like? Not what pays the bills. Not what do other people expect. But what fills me up? Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's mentoring. Maybe it's gardening. Maybe it's just sitting on your porch, listening to the birds, and feeling okay about that. I want to invite you gently, without pressure, to become curious about yourself again. To treat your life like a blank canvas, not a finished portrait. You've earned the right to explore, to be playful, even to be a beginner again. When was the last time you did something just for the joy of it? You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience, from stories, from wisdom. And those things, they don't expire. They evolve. You're allowed to evolve too. Let's pause for a moment here and breathe. You've carried so many responsibilities. You've been so strong for so long. And now, it's time to be kind to yourself. To see this new season not as a loss but as a liberation. Because you don't have to impress anyone anymore. You just have to be true to yourself. Now, as we begin to gently peel back the layers of who we thought we were, let's keep going deeper, not toward the past, but towards something even more meaningful. So we've talked about that quiet moment when everything slows down and you start to ask yourself, who am I now? And if that question still feels uncomfortable, that's okay. You're not alone. It's one of the most honest questions you can ask after a life of responsibility, achievement, and caregiving. Here's something I've learned. Identity isn't found in a rush. It's uncovered in reflection. And sometimes, the silence that once felt so strange becomes the very place where you finally hear your own voice again. I remember speaking to a woman named Linda. She'd been a nurse for 38 years. She raised 2 children, took care of her parents in their later years, and ran a household through every up and down. When she retired, she thought she'd be relieved. Instead, she felt lost. Her phone didn't ring as much. The structure of her day evaporated. She said, I don't know what to do with myself if I'm not taking care of someone. That really stuck with me. Because many of us, especially in our generation, were taught that our value came from being useful. So, when no one needs us in the same way anymore, we question our worth. But what if this chapter isn't about being needed by others? What if it's about needing yourself? About listening to your heart, your longings, your body, your spirit. About saying yes to your own life. For one stop, Linda started painting. She wasn't very good at first, but it made her happy. It helped her reconnect to her sense of creativity, beauty, peace. She told me, I don't paint because I'm good. I paint because it's mine. It's something that belongs to me, not a job or a task. And you know what? That's a powerful place to stand. Sometimes we need to rewrite the definition of who we are, not with titles, but with truths. Let me ask you this. If no one could see what you did with your day, what would you still choose to do? What brings you joy, even if no one claps? What makes you feel alive, even in the quiet? That's where your identity starts to take shape again, not through achievement, but through authenticity. I've met people in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who've started new lives, learned how to swim, joined a writing group, started dating. Again, picked up the piano, opened a tiny home bakery. Not to impress anyone, but because it felt like coming home to themselves. And in doing so, they became someone even more real than they were in their working years. You're not too late. You're right on time, Dot. And if your identity has been shaped by caring for others, being dependable, strong, and needed, that doesn't vanish. It evolves. You don't stop being you. You start meeting parts of yourself that have been waiting for a quieter season to speak up. Dot. It's kind of like cleaning out a closet. At first, it's overwhelming. You don't know what to keep, what to toss, what still fits. But then you start sorting. You find things you forgot you loved. You let go of things that no longer serve you. And little by little, space opens up. Breathing room. Room for who you are now, not who you used to be. I want to remind you, this part of life isn't an afterthought. It's a new beginning. The world may not talk about it as much, but some of the most meaningful self-discoveries happen after the job ends, after the children leave the house, after the hustle is over. And if you're sitting with feelings of grief or disconnection, or what now? Don't push them away. Sit with them like an old friend. Because buried beneath those feelings might be something extraordinary. Clarity, purpose, freedom. I know someone who started walking every evening after dinner, not to lose weight. Not for steps on a fitness app, but just to think. And in those 20-minute walks, they began to hear themselves again. Sometimes it's in the smallest acts that we reclaim our sense of self. So, if you're in that place right now where the routines have faded, the silence is louder, and your sense of identity feels foggy, know that you're not broken. You're unfolding. Let's keep going deeper, because underneath the surface of who we thought we had to be, there's someone even more remarkable waiting to be seen. Maybe the hardest part of this journey isn't losing the routines or roles. It's realizing that you can't go back to who you used to be, but you also don't yet know who you're becoming. That in-between place? It's where the most profound transformations often begin. I once heard someone say, retirement isn't the end of the book, it's the blank chapter you get to write for yourself. And maybe, for the first time in decades, you get to ask, what would I write if no one else were reading? It's not always easy to answer, especially if you've been the dependable one, the strong one, the one who had all the answers. It can feel vulnerable to admit you're unsure. But vulnerability is not weakness, it's the doorway to authenticity. A man named George, 72, once told me, I spent 40 years being a provider. That was my identity. And then one morning, I woke up with no meetings to go to, no deadlines to hit, and I realized I don't even know what kind of music I like anymore. That hit me hard, because it's not just about roles. It's about connection to yourself. So George did something small. He made a playlist. He started listening to music while sipping his morning coffee, just for the pleasure of it. That led to rediscovering jazz, and eventually joining a local music appreciation group. It didn't solve everything overnight, but it gave him a thread to follow, a thread that pulled him closer to himself. And sometimes that's how identity rebuilds. Not through big declarations, but through small acts of joy, curiosity, and attention. Through giving yourself permission to change, not into someone new, but into someone deeper. If you're wondering how to start, try this. Every morning, ask yourself one gentle question. What do I need today? Not to be productive, not to be admired, but to feel alive. The answer might surprise you. Maybe you need sunlight on your face, a walk with no destination, a good book, a handwritten letter, a moment of stillness. Maybe you need to cry or dance or say no to something you've always said yes to. This chapter of life, whatever age you're in, is not about returning to the past or rushing into the future. It's about standing still long enough to hear your soul whisper, I'm still here. Because beneath all the layers, career, family roles, accomplishments, is a quiet, steady self that has never left. Maybe you've just been too busy to look for it, but it's waiting, and it's wiser than ever. I believe the greatest freedom in aging isn't in what we do, it's in who we finally get to be. Free from comparison, free from chasing approval, free from pretending. You get to be real now. You get to be full of contradictions and wonder and softness and truth. If you've ever felt invisible after retirement, I want to say this. You're not invisible. You're just not performing anymore. And that's a beautiful thing. You are not less valuable now, You're just more honest, Dot. And if you feel grief, let it come. Because grief is often the evidence of how deeply you've lived, how much you've given. But don't stop at grief. Keep walking. Keep reaching. There's more ahead, Dot. I know it might feel uncertain. I know this isn't the identity you planned for. But it can be the identity you choose, with more wisdom, more compassion, more depth than ever before, Dot. So go ahead. Try the things that never made sense when you were working full-time. Take the nap. Try the pottery class. Say what you mean. Wear the hat. Start the journal. Make friends with the quiet, because you're not starting over. You're starting deeper. You are not what you did. You are who you are, still growing, still worthy, still wildly human. Dot. If any part of this conversation touched you, if you saw yourself in the stories or recognized a feeling you've had for a while, I want you to know you're not alone. In fact, thousands of people are waking up to the same questions right now. And together, we're building something beautiful. A life after work that isn't empty, but full of possibility. Dot. So if this video helped in any way, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, what's one small thing you're doing right now that brings you joy? What thread are you following? And if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because this space is here for you, for conversations that matter, for rediscovering who we are together. Here's to a life that's not behind you, but waiting quietly ahead, to purpose that isn't given, but chosen, and to becoming someone even more true than before. Here's to living your best life at any age. But here's the most powerful truth I've come to learn, and maybe you felt it too. Dot. We spend decades of our lives being useful, needed, productive. We raise children, build careers, solve problems, keep things running. But no one really teaches us how to just be, how to sit still in our own presence, without a role to play. And that's where many of us stumble after retirement. You see, it's not the absence of work that unsettles us. It's the silence. The blank space where once there was noise, deadlines, expectations. Suddenly, there's no one to ask how your day went. No task to complete. No job title to shield you from the deeper question underneath. Without all of that, am I still enough? And the answer, though it may take time to believe, is yes. You are not less valuable because you no longer clock in each morning. You are not invisible because your children are grown or your calendar is empty. You are not lost. You are evolving. Dot. It's okay to grieve what's gone. But please, don't stop growing because the world stopped asking you for things. Instead, ask yourself, what do I want to give now freely with no agenda? Maybe you've always wanted to write a book, or learn the guitar, or volunteer at the shelter, or simply wake up slow, sip your tea by the window, and feel the sun on your face without rushing anywhere. That matters too, because purpose doesn't always come wrapped in a paycheck or a productivity app. Sometimes it's in a conversation, a small act of kindness, a moment of stillness, a memory you decide to make today. Dot. And maybe, just maybe, the most authentic version of you is only now beginning to surface. You don't need to go back to who you were. That chapter is written. You don't need to compare your days to someone else's. And you certainly don't need permission to matter. Your value isn't measured by output. It's reflected in presence. Dot. So take the walk. Call that friend. Paint. Sing, rest, pray, laugh, whatever reminds you that you're alive in this moment. And when that voice of doubt creeps in and asks, but who am I now? You can answer, I am still becoming. And that's more than enough. If this video stirred something in you, a question, a memory, a spark, leave a comment. Let's talk. You never know who might need to read what you have to say. And if you found this helpful, hit the like button. It helps this message reach more people like you. Maybe even someone who feels alone right now and doesn't have the words to ask for help. Make sure to subscribe for more conversations like this, not to fix you, but to remind you of the strength and beauty you already carry. Because this chapter might be the one where you finally become the person you were always meant to be. Here's to rediscovering, reimagining, and reclaiming yourself at any age. You're not too late. You're right on time.